Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, a website designer and business coach for entrepreneurs and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want a deep dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a successful business and stand out in a crowd, you're in the right place. After creating a multiple six-figure-a-year website design business in my 20s, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, branding, website design, mindset, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. Happy podcast day, whatever day you're listening here. It's especially fun recording this today because I actually have not recorded an episode in a while. Most of what you've heard lately was batched a few weeks ago or longer ago. So it's been a while since I've gotten to talk to you all on the mic for the podcast. I've been recording my online course a lot. So that's been a huge thing I've been on the mic for. But in this episode, it's going to be fun. I'm talking about what the second trimester of pregnancy has been like. I'm going to talk about our Babymoon in New York City, exercises I've loved, what business has been like, maternity leave prep, maybe a little bit of nursery stuff, finding out the gender, all kinds of things. And there will be plenty of tips and takeaways throughout if you're expecting right now or thinking about having a baby or just wanting a more casual, fun, non-businessy related podcast episode. So as I'm recording this, I'm in my 25th week of pregnancy. I'm about to be at the 25-week point, I should say. And you'll be hearing this in the 26th week if you're listening live, which is towards the end of the second trimester. And then the next week, I think 27 weeks maybe is when the second trimester ends. I can't remember. But after that, I'll be in the third trimester, which is so wild, the last one of pregnancy. And I'm also going to note right here at the start before we get into all these different topics, I wrote a second trimester product recommendation blog post separate from what we'll talk about in this episode. So if you're pregnant, you need this blog post. I will be linking to it in the show notes, but to get to it real quick, it's just elizabethmccravey.com/second divider, the little dash thing, trimester, and that'll get you to it. But I'll link to that below. So that's going to have even more stuff that we won't be talking about here. All right, so let's dive in. All right, to start, I have a bunch of different topics we're going to go through, but the first one is gender reveal stuff. So I want to tell you guys about what it was like finding out the gender, what we did to celebrate, and some various things I learned through that experience. It's kind of fun. So first of all, we're having a boy, if you missed it. And oh my gosh, I have so much to share about that. But first of all, how we found out. So we had an ultrasound April 5th, so at the 20-week mark of pregnancy. Some people get that ultrasound as early as 18 weeks, and then sometimes people do genetic testing and they can find out the gender way earlier than that. We did not do that though. And I could hardly get anything done that day in anticipation of it. I think it was at 1 or 2 p.m. Super ready, so excited. We had decided ahead of time that we wanted to not find out the gender in the appointment itself, but instead find out after on our own at a dinner reservation we had made at a restaurant called Folk in Nashville. It's really good if you're ever in Nashville and want a place to eat. So we had a reservation there. So we told the ultrasound tech not to tell us the gender. However, I kind of found out in the appointment, and I went to the appointment thinking we were having a girl. And if you've listened to the podcast, followed along on Instagram with any of this, you've heard me say that I've just had a feeling it's a girl. All the old wives' tales pointed towards girl, all of that. Or at least it seemed like they did at the time. So a few things that happened though. So first, when it came time for us to turn away from the ultrasound footage, because you have a big screen in front of you, I'm laying on a table and Adam's sitting next to me. And when it came time for her to take ultrasound pictures that told the gender, she mentioned to us that she already quote unquote saw the gender before that moment. And I have a bunch of friends who have boys and they all told me that same thing happened to them. And it sounds like something that would happen when you're having a boy more so than having a girl, that you would see the gender beforehand. So anyway, that happened. mind that maybe like, oh, like that's interesting that she already knows. And then a little later in the ultrasound, after she had done that photo, and we were like able to look again, she switched to a full side view of baby. And I thought I saw a boy there. And she quickly changed the view because I think she knew that she was like showing us a view she shouldn't be. And I ended up asking her, like, did you show a view that would have told us the gender? And she's like, no, only at the point when you were turned away. But then as soon as we left the appointment, I told Adam, I was like, I definitely saw a boy on the screen. I could be wrong, but I really think I did. And he did not though. Like wasn't paying attention then or whatever. So we still weren't certain. We had a few more hours of anticipation before our dinner reservation where we went to a coffee shop and worked. And again, hard to focus. I was just so excited to find out. And I really would recommend doing it the way we did, because I think it was fun, not finding out in the appointment, finding out together, which I'll get into. But after that, we went to like a super early, I think it was like literally like 5 p.m. dinner, because I was like, we don't want to wait till like 7. Okay. We want to find out now. So we went to Folk. We ordered drinks in the app. And then when those came, we opened the envelope that they had given us. And it was like a printed image with a stork on it that was all blue and said it's a boy. And I was so shocked because, again, I thought it was a girl. In my mind, it seemed like all the wives' tales pointed towards a girl. But I want to emphasize, I was going to be so excited either way. I know I've said that on the podcast and on Instagram multiple times, and all my like friends and family know that. But I definitely thought it was a girl. Like that was just like, if I was picking, that's what I thought, instinctually that it was going to be. And so everything became real though in that moment. Once we knew it was a boy, it was like we could see more of what his life might be like more specifically. So just know, if you are expecting, like it all gets really, really, really even more real when you find out the gender. So the next day though, we were so excited, had so much fun at that reservation and whatnot. And then the next day though, I had a bit of a freak out, thinking to myself, I don't know anything about boys. That's literally what I told Adam the next morning. And then I was like, what if my son doesn't like me? And it was a whole drama. It was really kind of odd. And now I've known though that so many women have had that same experience who have a boy when they were thinking it was a girl, or feel like they know stuff about girls better. So for my situation specifically, if you didn't know, I grew up with just a sister. And after my parents divorced when I was pretty little, I lived with my mom. So it was all girls in the house. And my dad and I were very close. If you've listened to this podcast, heard me talk about my dad, you know that. But I didn't live with him. So suddenly I felt like in that moment, finding out the gender, I didn't know anything about boys. And if you didn't know, most of my clients are women in my business. I'm used to working with women in that regard. And it also hit me that moment in that morning that every job I've worked prior to my business, all the staff who surrounded me were typically women. And in some jobs I've had, it was like exclusively we work with women type of companies, except for working at my dad's sawmill, which was like my first real job, so to speak. But like the first real job that wasn't with family, it was like, yeah, I'm working with women. So I came around and realized like everything's okay. And if we were having a girl, I'm sure I'd have a similar freak out, but like with a different aspect of becoming a parent, right? Because there's so many things that you could feel like about the mother-daughter relationship too. So I know that everything's fine. But I talked now too with so many boy moms who understood my sentiment completely. And it was really funny because the day after I found out, I went to a podcast batching week and I had interviewed Amber Housley for this podcast. You heard it a few weeks ago. It's a really great episode if you missed that one. So definitely go back to it. But I told Amber the gender before we started recording. We chatted about it for a while, and she has 2 kids and her first was a boy. And she was the same way with me. Grew up around women, works with women, assumed she'd have a girl. And one thing she said that really like stuck out to me is that most women assume their first will be a girl, and especially women like us who work with a lot of women. And I can see that in conversations with people I've had since, just that like, yeah, it's really common for women to just assume they're having a girl and that we know girl stuff and whatnot. So anyway, I was always excited. I want to emphasize that, but I did come around to not being like afraid of raising boys, because I was a little bit like feeling that of like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about boys. And now I feel like so excited about boy things in particular now. That's been really fun to think about, like aspects of raising a son that are different from raising a daughter. That gets me really excited. So it's just really fun. It's been quite exciting, like exploring all that. So next thing, we did have a little gender reveal party with friends, and I'm going to talk about that real quick because there is, for those of you who are expecting or thinking about having a baby soon, here's some advice on this. So We originally were not going to do anything for the gender reveal. We're just thinking we'd call people, text them, whatever, and tell them once we were ready to tell people. We have a lot of like complicated stuff in our family, divorce and things like that. And plus, none of our parents live in Nashville. So it felt like doing a party with family just felt really complicated and like it wasn't going to work. So we had like ruled that out. But then the night we found out, like literally that night going back to our house, we had the bright idea to do something with friends. And we had been wanting to throw a party for a while, just at our house and just like a random, like no real purpose, but like, let's just all hang out kind of party. We love hosting, but we hadn't done like a big hosting where we were like doing food and drinks and all that. So we were like, that's a great opportunity to do that. So that night we picked a date that was literally 4 days later, and we invited some friends and we had a party with friends, and the party was so fun. So that's why I would just say, like, if you're not sure about it, like consider doing like an impromptu party with friends. So we got Moe's catered. I made margaritas for people. We had beer and drinks, and we got an incredible gender reveal cake that was, seriously, I'm not kidding, the best cake I've ever had. Like, no joke. It was not because it was like cool and told the gender. It was just like literally the best tasting cake. And I will be using that baker again. I'll link to her in the show notes if you're in Nashville and looking for awesome cakes. She was incredible. But we told our friends by cutting into the cake, we were all just sitting around our living room, and the cake had like the middle layer was blue to tell the gender. So that's how we told everyone. And it's funny because we had people vote right beforehand on boy or girl. And out of like, I think we had like 15 friends there. Out of all of them, only 2 people voted boy, which is so funny. Just everyone thought it was going to be a girl. And I think a big piece of that is of our friends who have kids so far who live in Nashville. Everyone in our friend group has boys already. So it was kind of like the idea of like, okay, someone's got to have a girl. Maybe it'll be them. But it wasn't, another boy. So that was kind of funny. But I can't recommend a party with friends enough. If you're someone who feels like a family party isn't doable for whatever reason, I would just say like getting some close friends together, doing something special to tell them is totally worth it. They'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. And it was so special. And we went to bed that night feeling like so celebrated. And I always say it, but I just feel like we have the sweetest friends ever. And that was just a really special night doing that. So anyway, that's the gender reveal wonderfulness. And we're having a boy. And I'm so excited. So, okay, now on to the next topic. That was a little longer than I thought, but I hope you are enjoying this and sticking with me. I'm going to talk about physical aspects of pregnancy and our baby moon up next. And then like some different exercises to prep for birth, which is really fun. So to talk about how I'm feeling physically. So again, I've talked about this in the podcast, but I had a somewhat breezy first trimester, which again, I'm so grateful for. I know that's not everyone's experience. Very grateful for it. I was tired and fatigued like most people are first trimester, but outside of that, I felt good. I never threw up once. I only had minor nausea, probably like less than 10 times. Felt good, generally speaking. But most of the second trimester, I've also felt really good. I've had that second trimester energy you hear people talk about, which I'm so grateful for, because most of my course for designers, Booked Out Designer, has been created during the second trimester, which like what a feat. I'm really proud of that, and felt like grateful of the timing that it will have been created during the trimester where you do tend to have more energy, which I'll talk about that towards the end of this episode a little bit more. But now that I'm at the very end of the second trimester, mainly like the last 4 weeks, I'll say I have felt those pregnancy aches and pains and all the pregnancy stuff people talk about. So I'm still enjoying pregnancy, I'll say that, but I do like feel pregnant now, whereas before I would say like I didn't necessarily feel pregnant. So some funny things, like I can't easily see my feet. Putting on shoes is weird. It's so interesting. Like once that hit me of like, it's more effort now to put on shoes. It's just really interesting. Picking up things when I drop them on the floor is more effortful. Like I literally squat down to get something a different way. I'm finally hungrier than I usually am. Most of my pregnancy, my appetite didn't really change. If I was eating more, it was because I wanted to, not because I felt literally like this baby is needing me to get more food. Now I do feel that way of like, okay, I'm starting to feel like I actually do have like a bigger appetite. And then the biggest thing is just achy, like an achy back, achy feet. I've had headaches some. I've had itching still, which I talked about on the last pregnancy episode, but that is getting better. And at one point we were a little worried that it was turning into a pregnancy condition. I might be pronouncing it wrong. I'm pretty sure it's cholestasis of pregnancy is how you say it. But now they don't think that's what it is. And I might end up having to get tested for it. But right now it doesn't look like I will, which is good. But I've been more tired. My feet get winded after not walking for that much time, which is interesting with walking. My tailbone aches a lot. If you didn't know, fun fact, I have broken my tailbone twice, once in high school, once in middle school. So a long time ago now, but I always have had a sensitive tailbone because of that. It's been aching a ton. Baths have become very essential for me after having literally never really taken a bath in our house the whole time we've lived here. Comfortable shoes have become essential as well. A lot of essential oils for headaches and aching. I've always been someone who really likes essential oils, but I haven't utilized them fully until now because it is I'm not going to pop an ibuprofen when I have a headache. A quick headache tip that's helped me is using peppermint oil on my head, which you're supposed to dilute it with an oil with it, like a carrier oil. I usually just put it on straight on my head and it kind of burns a little bit, but it still feels good. And that's seriously alleviated headaches, nausea, anything. I've also had heartburn, which is new to me. I'd literally not ever had that before and had to Google to figure out okay, what is this I'm feeling? I'm okay, it's heartburn. I thought that's what it was, but wasn't sure. So, I've gotten to see and feel baby boy kick now, which is the wildest thing ever. It's amazing. And for a while, only I could feel the kicking. It was more subtle and an internal feeling. And now if I tell Adam to put his hand there, he can also feel the kicks. And on our Babymoon, actually last week, we had a moment where I was just watching my stomach and we got to see a little kick happen. My stomach literally moved from that. It was really cool. So I feel I could watch that happen all day. So that's a little bit of the physical side of things. But again, feeling good overall, anticipating some of the changes that come in the third trimester of just maybe the tiredness getting worse. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is so emotional. That's been really fascinating as well. I've had multiple times in the second trimester where I have cried about something, but not fully understood why I'm crying, which is interesting because that's not normally the case for me. I'm not great at connecting to emotions to begin with, of knowing why I'm feeling something necessarily, but I've had particular times where I'll be crying. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm crying. I'm just feeling emotional. And yeah, it definitely feels okay, these are the pregnancy hormones happening. Okay, so that's a little bit of that part. Now, let me talk about Babymoon stuff. Again, I have some tips and thoughts here for those of you who are pregnant or thinking about planning a Babymoon. We just got back from ours 2 days ago as I'm recording this. Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravy.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravy.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. And if you're expecting, listen up because I have some tips here. So Babymoon. If you haven't heard that term, because I've realized a lot of people actually don't use that term, even though I feel like I've heard it a lot. But it's a trip before the baby with just your spouse is the idea. So it's playing off the term honeymoon, but it's like a vacation before the baby comes. So for us, when deciding where to go, it was tough because we wanted to go somewhere that would be especially challenging to go with a baby and do it the way we wanted to do. So because of this, we did not want to go somewhere that we already go often, like Florida. We wanted to do something more active, but also somewhere we had not been yet together. Also something that wasn't too active that it was going to like be bad for me being pregnant. We also didn't want a trip that was like focused on like drinking being an aspect of it. Cause like we've been wanting to get back to Napa Valley, for example, but it's like, yeah, that's not where you want to go when you're pregnant. So anyway, we landed on New York City because we've been talking about going there for years, but hadn't made it happen. And I had been exactly 10 years ago with my grandparents, actually, like almost to the week of this trip. My grandparents love New York City. They traveled there a lot for years, and they lived there at one point. So I got to do an awesome trip with them there. And then Adam went to New York when he was little, but it had been a really even longer time for him. So it was everything I could have hoped for out of the trip. We both commented multiple times, like the whole time and like on the plane ride back, of just how smooth everything went. And we timed it just right, technically. So here's my tips though. If COVID had not been a thing, what I would recommend is going on the trip earlier in your second trimester. For us, because of the way COVID and New York was, we wanted to wait longer. And so we were going, basically at the very end of the second trimester, because we were trying to make sure New York was more open so we could actually do stuff. And it was super open, which I will get to. But we did the trip, like I said, during like the 24th, 25th week of pregnancy. But I think doing more like 20 weeks would have been ideal, because I would have felt better physically, less achy, less sore feet all the time, less big belly and weight carrying around. So that's my advice. Time it earlier if you are able to. But nonetheless, our trip was amazing. It was active as in like a lot of walking, but not too active that it crushed me or anything. We were truly doing stuff that like felt like, okay, this is not something we would like do with a baby necessarily. Like we'd love to bring our baby to New York at some point, but it was like a lot of activity and things. So we ate amazing food. We went to museums. We spent a lot of time in Central Park, which was really fun. Plays on Broadway were still closed. It actually, I think, opens like next week again. So if we'd waited like another week, we could have done that. But we had plenty to do even without that. And New York City was so open. So we were expecting more of like ghost town vibes, or more restaurants not being opened, or like stuff not being at full capacity. And at least for where we went, which we went pretty much all over the city. We stayed in Midtown, but then really did like take Ubers or walk all over the place. But it wasn't like that at all. At any part of the city we went to, restaurants were all packed. Not many people were wearing masks outside, just walking around. And there were plenty of people out and about. And it was really cool. So NYC felt more similar to how Nashville feels right now with COVID, of like being kind of back to being a bit more open. Nashville's still more open, I would say, but it felt nice, feeling more normal. And I'm sure the people of New York City appreciate things opening back up more too. And I'm sure like it felt more open to us because we're comparing it to Nashville amount of people. So I'm sure like to New Yorkers, it might feel like, okay, there's still like less people here. But to us, it was like, all right, this place is pretty crowded. And all the restaurants we went to, again, were like completely packed. So anyway, it was nice going and it feeling more normal. And it was seriously a perfect trip. And I'm so grateful. So yeah, but my tip would be like to go earlier in the second trimester if you can time it with your work and with wherever you're traveling to and that sort of thing, because you'll feel better when you are less pregnant traveling. And yeah, it was great. And flying somewhere that's a short fly, which I appreciated that. Like flying from Nashville to New York, I want to say was like an hour and a half to 2 hours, like not long at all, which the plane ride was not super comfortable for me on the way back. I did get pretty nauseous. So having that have been a really long flight, I do not think would have been ideal. So anyway, highly recommend the Babymoon. It was super fun. We feel very like bonded getting to hang out and just like stopping work and being together. And yeah, in a new city, super fun. And just to note real quick, if you want to hear the last episode I did that was a pregnancy rapid fire Q&A, that's episode 112. So just scroll back a little bit to that one. And I'm going to link all the pregnancy episodes so far in the show notes for this if you want to just quickly access them all and get all the links, all the blog posts, all of it so far. Okay, so now next topic, exercises for birth prep. Interesting thing. Didn't really know that was a thing. Totally is. So there are a few exercises I've been trying to do daily. Don't do it perfectly, but trying to do daily that are all birth prep type of stuff. And I have not done this perfectly at all, not even a little bit. But again, like I love the goals of it. And I love like as I get close to like the third trimester, I'm going to try to take it more seriously of like, okay, I'm going to like stay on track, do all these things every day. But I've been using this awesome app called Done. I will link to it in the show notes, but I've been using it to track my progress with stuff. It's really cool. It's great. Like goal tracking, habit tracking might even be a better way to phrase it because it's more for like something you're trying to do daily, weekly, or monthly, but it's an app for that. I have the paid version. It's just $10 for an entire year, which allows you to do like an unlimited amount of habits you're tracking. So anyway, called Done. Totally awesome for like anything in your life or business. But I've been using it to track this stuff because it helps me reminds me to do it. Helps me like, feel like I'm accomplishing something when I do it. So the main things I'm doing, first thing, low squat holds. So these are deep squats for my yoga people. Think about the position you get into right before you do a crow pose. In yoga language, malasana is the name of this type of deep squat. Like that poses it. So if you want to like see a picture, you can look that up. But I'm aiming to do 20 minutes a week of these right now. So not daily, but 20 minutes total a week. And I think the longest I've held it at once is 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes total at once, where I'm just like sitting in that, not moving, staying still, getting in that deep stretch. And I'm already pretty flexible, like before pregnancy. Again, I taught yoga for years and did cheerleading before that. So it's not especially difficult for me, but I'll do that while watching TV and just like sit in that position, instead of like lounging on the couch. And one of the resources that I've been using to like learn these different exercises, which I'll talk about in a moment, but they were suggesting like trying to work up slowly to like 5 minutes at a time and then so on for it with when you're in the deep squat, your heels touching down on the ground. So not being on your tiptoes, but heels all the way down, which I already do it that way naturally, but that's something good. Really helpful for getting flexibility, getting ready for birth. Okay, so the next thing I've been doing is something called pelvic tilt, which is basically cat-cows from yoga. So like, where you arch the back up, then round it. So doing those, I do those again while watching TV, or just in the morning or something. I'm aiming to do that for 2 minutes a day. I could probably do that for longer pretty easily, but 2 minutes feels good to me. So 2 minutes total a day. Okay, and then another one I've been doing is a chair inversion. So I do not know how to explain it that well, but basically your feet and knees are on a chair, like behind you, and then your hands are on the ground in front. So your butt is higher than everything else. Like your body is kind of sloping down. And the reason people say this is good is it's great for encouraging the baby to get an optimal positioning for birth. So I've been doing that for about a minute or two a day, and you do have like the blood rushing to your head feeling because you are in like a mild inversion. Like it's not the same as doing like a headstand or handstand, but it is a mild inversion. So I'll do it for like 30 seconds and then come back up and then like do another 30 seconds until I get to like a minute or two. And then the next one is squats. So my goal is 700 squats a week. So averaging about 100 a day and just normal exercise squats. So I'll do some variations of like doing some deeper squats, doing some squats with my legs closer together, some sumo squats, like walking squats, all kinds of things, but just squats. Super good for preparing your body for birth. So if you're wondering, like, where am I getting all these ideas? Some of them come from Ina May's Guide to Childbirth book. She talks about like literally, I forget what point it is in the book, but she talks about trying to do 500 squats a day, which I'm like, it might have been 300 that she says. It's a big number though. So I'm not doing that right now. Maybe I'll eventually like make some crazy goal like at the end of pregnancy to like do that many a day. I don't know. I think it's fun again, like using this app to track it and whatnot, but that's one place I've gotten some of these exercises. Spinning Babies is another one. That's a really great resource website. But then the place I've heard these in particular that I mentioned reiterated the most is is the Pregnancy and Birth Made Easy podcast by the women at My Essential Birth. Y'all, this podcast, it's called Pregnancy and Birth Made Easy. It is the best pregnancy podcast out there, hands down, no questions. It's amazing. I wish I would have discovered it sooner. I've learned so much from them, and the hosts are just incredible. They're very generous with their information. They're easy to listen to. It's fun, but informative. They're both doulas, and they have a course as well on natural childbirth. But I will say, even though their whole podcast is themed around natural birth, it's not like a anti-medication whatsoever. Like, they talk about epidurals, they talk about interventions and all different things you can choose to do, which I have found really helpful to like have all the sides of that. But anyway, it's incredible. And I have not taken their course. I might still get it because I am just like so obsessed with their content. And if it's even like half as good as their podcast, I know it's going to be like the greatest pregnancy, birth, labor course ever. So if you're pregnant, you need the podcast. If you're pregnant, check out their course. Again, their business is called My Essential Birth, and I'll link to them. But then the podcast is called Pregnancy and Birth Made Easy. So I've been listening to it constantly. Adam also listens to it some. After I listen to an episode in particular where I'm like, he would benefit from this, I will send it to him and tell him to listen. So it's amazing. Shout out to them. But they gave me the idea for those exercises because they talk about in their podcast, and they have a free exercise guide where they talk about, it's like a free download on their site that's like exercises to prep for labor. And some of those I just said are in that guide. So again, the exercises I'm aiming to do daily are the low squat hold, which is malasana for yoga people, squats, just normal exercise squats, pelvic tilts, the chair inversion, and then also just stretching. And as much as possible, I'm sitting on my yoga ball when I'm watching TV or relaxing another way, instead of just like laying down on the couch, which again takes a lot of motivation. So like if we're watching a TV show at night, I might lay down for like half the episode, and then for the next half, like do these exercises and then sit on the yoga ball to just try to like, just to sit well. And I'm probably going to, in this third trimester, bring my yoga ball into my office and sit on that when I'm working instead of in my normal desk chair. So if you want to see the workouts I've been doing for like actual, like, okay, this is like a workout at the gym type of thing, I'm linking to some videos I've loved on YouTube in the second trimester products blog post. So specific YouTube I've loved, blogs, all of it. So that's elizabethmccravey.com/second, like write the word out, then dash trimester, and then you can see all that there. Okay, so other things that have started to do in the second trimester. One is going to the chiropractor. I've only gone 2 or 3 times now, and then my fourth or third, I can't remember how many times I've gone now. It hasn't been made. It's been less than 5. But my next one, it will be today, actually. So I haven't gone a ton yet, but super helpful. Right now, I'm going every other week. We might even switch it to being a little less frequent for the next few weeks. But then once I get closer to the due date, I'll go weekly. And then like right beforehand, I might even go like multiple times in a week, depending on like what we think would be helpful. So I've really enjoyed that. I'm not someone who had gone to the chiropractor prior to pregnancy. I'd gone one time, had a horrible experience at the place, and never went back. And then the person I'm seeing now is a woman. Her name's Dr. Carly, and she is just incredible. And I've really enjoyed her. And she's great for like pregnancy in particular, and knows a lot about all that. Another thing I've been doing is taking the bath once a week and using the pregnancy flakes by Pink Stork in it, in the bath. Those are really awesome, very soothing, helps with all the achiness. I've been walking a lot. I mentioned there's some exercise videos I'm linking to, but in addition to those, to be honest, like the strength training has been happening a lot less for me, but just going outside and walking is happening a lot more frequently because that's like what ends up feeling best for me. And so that's what I do. I also started working with a voice coach. I've only had one session with her, but we're going to have some more because, to be honest, right now, as I'm recording, I'm about 31 minutes into like me recording on this track right now. My throat's hurting. So I decided to start seeing a voice coach because sore throats for me has always been a thing, especially in podcasting, of like once I talk for too long, my throat just starts to hurt, and it's like can feel debilitating to where like I end up feeling sick the rest of the day. All the amazing podcasters out there who talk about how like they're batching like 10 episodes a day and stuff like that. I've always been like, I could never do that because my throat will hurt too bad. So I wanted to work with a voice coach to try to help me solve some of that. And we've had one session, again, it was really good, but I clearly am not using all the techniques she gave me properly because my throat's hurting so bad right now. And the throat problem has become worse in pregnancy. So like on one hand, it's become worse because I've been recording this online course, which is so much content. It's kind of like if I were to be recording like 13 podcast episodes a week, like just so much talking. And then on top of that, still doing the podcast. And then when you're pregnant, everything is like more squished up in there. So like getting out of breath is a more natural thing, all of that. So she actually, it's crazy. Once I booked her, she listened to an episode of my podcast and immediately said she was able to tell what I was doing wrong that was hurting my throat. And then she made a point to say, the podcast sounds great. Like your voice sounds great, all of that. But it's that she could tell I'm working, like pulling the voice out from my throat instead of more like from my stomach and chest, I think is how she like described it. So anyway, I'm still doing it wrong clearly because I'm trying to sit the way she taught me to sit now and all that, but my throat's hurting really bad. So anyway, that's been a tough thing in pregnancy, but I'm going to do another session with her. I also got a humidifier in my office that I've been using for when I'm recording, and that's been helpful. But yeah, that's like sinuses and stuff is a real thing in pregnancy. But the voice coach is one thing I've started doing. I also might start seeing an acupuncturist in the 3rd trimester, but I have not done that yet. And I've done research a little bit of people around Nashville who do that. But yeah, definitely going to like step it up with the chiropractor. And I plan to do some of those other things people talk about, like the raspberry leaf tea, the eating 6 dates, all of that once I hit the weeks where that's necessary. So I'll be sure to talk about that when I do like a 3rd trimester episode. Okay, let's talk about business stuff. That's like my last topic here. So for the business, I wrote and finished most of my booked out designer course in the 2nd trimester, which is wild. And I know I mentioned that earlier, but I really do think I'll look back on this time of being pregnant this year as like my most productive time ever. Hopefully I continue to become like more productive, I guess. But like, it just feels like, wow, I'm doing this huge thing in my business and there's a baby growing in me. And like also preparing our home, preparing our lives for a baby, like with the giant to-do list that comes with. And then on top of that, like creating an online course. So at the time I'm recording this right now, I have 2 modules left to create in this course, this giant course that is 9 modules of content. And each module is around 10 to 13 lessons, I would say, within it. So it's a lot of content. And I have 2 left to create. I've been going like 1 module at a time and then releasing it to my beta students. You can hear all about the launch in the course a few episodes back. I did 2 episodes talking about that. But I'm enjoying it so much. Like I feel like the best way to describe it is that I'm literally dumping my entire brain out when it comes to working with clients, running a successful design business, all of it. It's like I'm putting it all out on paper in an outline. It's not literally on paper, but all in my computer, and then I'm recording it. And there have been so many moments when I'm working on the course where it's like my hands typing cannot keep up with my brain speed-wise, because it's like I've been sitting on this information for what feels like years, ready to like record this course, and it all just flows. So it's like, it's so interesting because like I feel very drained after I do an outline and record it, because I really do feel like, oh my God, I just like drained my brain of all my thoughts on this. But it also can feel a bit like it moves quickly because I'm not researching. I'm not like having to figure out what to say. It's like, it's all there. I've thought about this a ton, and it's all there and ready to go. So 2 modules left, and I'm loving it, and I can't wait to launch it again very soon. So stay tuned for that. Another thing that happened in the 2nd trimester, I designed an entire template, which you'll be hearing about that soon, and some more templates that'll be releasing. So get excited about that. I don't want to do any spoilers there, but that is something that's coming. And I have everything mapped out for my business, like all the business to-dos before baby arrives, week by week. Like here's the focus on the agenda. And I know what every week until the due date is like, with the final weeks being no work or catching up. So I know that babies don't come on their due date most of the time. So I'm not like assuming that. In the final weeks, it is kind of like maternity leave prep and like catching up and things of that nature. But for like the weeks where I can hopefully expect maybe not to be here yet, I do have stuff planned and I'm like ready to go. Things like finishing the course, finishing the new templates, launching the course again, launching new templates, preparing my business and my team for me to be out of office. We also might be hiring an intern, which is something that I need to work on today probably. So yeah, it's just a whole feed on its own, even the maternity leave aspect of it. So I'll be sure to record an episode about like what I'm doing to prep for maternity leave once I like have that figured out. I have a whole agenda of like, okay, this person needs to be connected to this person for like contractors I work with, and then different things like already thinking about Black Friday, which is obviously not till November, but like if I'm going to be kind of out of office for that, like what does that need to look like? So there's a lot of things to prep there. It's exciting. This little Babymoon trip, it felt like a good test towards that, of like my team being completely working without me and me being off the grid and like, okay, how does it work for me to be gone for a week? Like what comes up? And we have our team meeting tomorrow. We'll be able to talk about like, okay, what came up, like what was needed, what was missing for you guys, just thinking about like, okay, what do we need to do to prep for this maternity leave? So I'm really excited about that. And, you know, some women who are business owners choose not to take like much of a maternity leave. For me, I want to have the option is how I feel. Like if I decide that like I want to go back sooner and like come back fully working sooner, that's awesome. But I want to have the ability to not, if I'm feeling like, okay, I'm really just enjoying being with my baby, or this is a huge adjustment where I need time off for other reasons. Like I want to be able to give myself that. And so that's how I'm preparing for it. Even on my maternity leave, you'll still get podcast episodes. I'll still be on Instagram sharing probably a lot more newborn stuff than I am business stuff. But like all of that will still be happening. It's super, super exciting. So yeah, that is my second trimester recap. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I think that's mostly it. Again, I would highly encourage you to check out the blog post that goes with this. I'm talking about different supplements I've added this trimester. Clothing must have some really fun like fashion finds from Amazon and from some other boutiques that I've enjoyed for like pregnancy clothes. I talk some about skincare stuff for pregnancy. What else? I mean, there's a lot in it. I wrote the blog post yesterday and it was really fun, like putting on like, I talk about nursery stuff in there too, like the stuff we've already bought for our nursery, if you're curious about any of that. So that is all there. ElizabethMcCravey.com/second written out with a divider dash trimester. I'll link to that in the show notes. And then you can also get everything as well in the blog post for this episode. So it's ElizabethMcCravey.com/118 will get you there. So hope you enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there were any specific takeaways. I always love hearing from you guys over on Instagram or in an email if that's better for you. Share this with your friends. If you have friends who are pregnant right now and you're like, oh yeah, they would totally benefit from hearing some of this, definitely share it with them. And I just want to say too, thank you guys for following along in this journey. It's been fun getting to share this with people and getting to like do things like record this episode. I've really enjoyed it. So I'll be back next week with a business focused episode, and I'll talk to you more about pregnancy stuff again in a few weeks. All right. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the podcast this week, friend. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you about something. I would encourage you to check out my website template shop. Over on ElizabethMcCravey.com, you'll find Show It website templates, and they are easy to use, strategically designed, and created to help you book more clients and customers. Maybe your current website is really boring. I don't know, maybe it is, and maybe you don't want to hurt its feelings, but you know it's true. And your website needs to be strategically and intentionally designed in order for it to convert your viewers into raving customers. And that's what these website templates do on MShop. These are pre-made website templates built for the Show It platform where you can plug and play your content into the template with ease and then get started with a website that is made to actually make you money. Isn't that what we all want, right? So go shop the templates at ElizabethMcCravey.com/shop. That link is also in the show notes. And don't forget that you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate it if you left a rating and review for the show on Apple Podcasts, or even just share it with a friend. It's a great way to support the show and then give us your feedback. So thanks so much for listening.